of this relationship between CO2 and temperature. And worse yet, a person like the producer of his movie, Laurie David, do you know that person?
Yes, I know of her.
Yes. She actually, after the success of The Inconvenient Truth, I presume that she also won a trophy for herself. So she actually wrote a book called A Guide to Global Warming, a special guide to global warming. And those book was said to be targeting children 8 years and older, okay? To try to target the school children, and then collaborating with another person by the name of Cumbria Gordon. They were so unlucky or lucky, depends on how you see this. The first day the book came out, I roughly remember, is September 1st, I remember, of 2007. I was at a bookstore with my son, which is about 3 years old at that time. But I, of course, knew that it's coming out, but then I just so happened to be in bookstore that day, and that day it came out, so I saw the book. Okay, I opened it, I looked. I didn't flip more than 16 pages, and I saw one already. It's the same stuff again. It's the same stuff of this carbon dioxide and temperature curve. And of course, in that writing, they were specifically trying to say that CO2 is an air pollutant that is, we human emit. Of course, forgot to say that, 650,000 years ago, there couldn't possibly be a SUV there. And then they was trying to say, well, look at this graph. You just have to do this flip page to see how close the relationship between CO2 and temperature is. With the suggestion, of course, that more CO2 means temperature warming. And if you look carefully in the graph, something totally damaging for them that is happening. I saw that graph, of course. It's actually showing two curves. One is orange curve, one is blue curve. The essential point is that in the label, they say the orange curve, let's say, is the carbon dioxide, and then the blue curve is the temperature. They plot it in such a way that they show that the orange curve actually is changing first, and then the blue curve, the temperature response. Okay? You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
They are actually saying that carbon dioxide is causing all the temperature to changes, okay, over 650,000 years. And then, remember what I just told you, we know this stuff about temperature causing the CO2 to change at least 20 years ago when the result first came out for 160,000 years, and then in 1999 we extended to 420,000 years, and then in 2005 we extended to about 650,000 years. And it turns out that they actually switched the graph, the curve, to try to make the CO2, the actual temperature curve is turned into CO2, and then the actually CO2 curve is turned into temperature. When I saw this, I called my friend, I say, Bob, do you want to pay for this book? Because I could not buy this book, with principal. It's $20, but I refuse to pay it. If you want to do it, I'll write a 2-page report for you. Something very bad in this book, I say. And remember, they're targeting children. So I'm doubly not happy with this because they switched the graph. And then I wrote the report up by showing, of course, that this is completely opposite, they are wrong. And then what we did is that we didn't make a noise. I first wrote a letter to the chief scientist of the British Antarctic Survey, who actually claimed was acknowledged by Laurie David to be helping her. I told him about this fact. His name is Eric Wolf. And I said, Dr. Wolf, here's the situation, would you come out and say that, that's wrong, and then please tell her to correct this. And then I also wrote to Peter Robinson, which is the president of Scholastic that published the book, #1 children book scholar, right, publisher. Guess what the response is? Both sides refused to even stand up for this untruth. Eric Wolf was more cordial by saying, she's after all not a scientist, so on. But I say your name is being used here to say that you supply the data. Okay? And then the Peter Robinson one is even more aggressive. They say, essentially saying you're some kind of right-wing conspiracy trying to destroy and attack Laurie David. Remember, this person trying to write a book and misled children and then saying that we are attacking her. She's the one that switched the graph. And then, guess what? A month later, they actually hire another person, a Princeton professor. The name is Michael Oppenheimer. He's actually a very good chemist before. By the way, by coincidence, he also came to my center, Harvard Center, Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics in the 70s when he was doing science then. But this person, Michael Oppenheimer, was also the former chief scientist for environmental defense, as you know. It's the group that is very, very, in a sense that politics is a lot more important than science for that group. So this Michael Oppenheimer now have a position of professorship at Princeton, who essentially wrote a letter like this. Essentially say, we have checked these things, I have checked these things, and they are correct. Essentially that the curve has been switched. Okay, so guess who's right on this? We're right? That they have switched the graph. But what makes me really angry about that letter was to say this. But, here's the big but. The but is the worst but that I can see in the history of this kind of communication. Still trying to twist around, but he said, the language and the text that is used, by the way, is very precise to say that CO2 and then temperature, that kind of thing. You can read in detail that books. And then they say, but the language used is all correct to the level in which it should be understandable by children 8 years or older. What that implies to me is, I take it is to say that, well, I can sell you a false product, and then even if you have an error, you should be able to correct it for yourself. Okay? The reason why I wrote to Peter, would you retract all these books and then pay, basically, don't send this book out until you really have it correct and then send it out, right? They refuse to do that. And they send this person I don't know whether they pay him or not, but that's what it is. He come back and say, wow, everything you say is correct, but children should be able to correct it for themselves.
I'm so sad.
It's amazing. And look at this. This is a small, tiny little incident that I bet that no more than 1,000 people heard me before, but I will keep saying until the day I die, because this is the true fact. I have all those letters, but no one wants to hear it. Laurie David, when he first heard about this, she was very angry, of course. Actually, she did even post something on the Huffington Post saying essentially this is the right-wing conspiracy after her, But it's unbelievable. This is the kind of approach that this is their approach towards truth, and then they expect people to stand up and agree with this. And I was very doubly saddened, especially the chief scientist of a British Antarctic Survey, a person of considerable stature, in my opinion. And I sort of know his work and admire his work, and I wrote to him nicely, and they would not stand up. This is where the money gravy train is very, very important, okay? That the result coming from Antarctica has to have some kind of importance, okay? That they're refusing to step off, even when so blatant untruth. And I guess I can only relieve myself by giving a joke like this. Wow, it's not Laurie David that did it. It's basically a cross-eye printers, who didn't get paid enough by Laurie David that just want to purposefully trick her and then switch the graph for her. You're not laughing, but anyway.
I know.
They refuse to back off, and it's just a shame.
What's happening right now with your profession and what your day-to-day is like? What's your life like now?
To me, the joy is, of course, to be able to come to work and then sit down at my desk and then start to think about some of the things that I didn't do yesterday and, try to pursue further. I would say that it's a lot of very unpleasurable things, because I'm still very heavily into this research on climate change. So there are a lot of very unpleasant things. I can give you one more example, then maybe I'll stop.
When you stop, I have more questions for you, but I have several things I want to ask you, but go ahead.
Oh, please do. Unless you don't have questions, then I'll truly stop.
Well, that'll never happen, because I have endless questions.
To say is this. Several months ago, myself, David Legates, and then another professor by the name of Sultan Hamid from Stony Brook at New York, I have decided that enough is enough on this issue of CO2 religion, in my opinion, I call it now. And I was trying to say that, well, let's have a proper discussion. Let's scientists take back science, because it's only our duty. I do not believe in any politician, right or left, whatever. I don't believe in anybody, any funding, just scientists standing for science, right? That seems to be a very logical thing to do.
Yeah.
By the way, I've been doing that quite a lot, of course, in other aspects. I've been doing that for a while. But for this one, I just fed up enough that I say, well, now I'm going to organize a scientific session in American Geophysical Union in San Francisco in December. So I wrote a proposal, right, to say that we will have this session, and then, in fact, I was so excited because I was able to come up with a rather unique and special thing to try to tie it to Galileo in terms of 400 years anniversary of 1609, where he pointed the telescope to heaven. Then everything changes in a lot of ways. And Galileo, as the master of I guess the first few true scientists who give the notion that science is not about claims or even authority, especially his prosecution with the church, right?
Yeah.
I set him as a very good example. So my title of my session was basically the view from Galileo's window, and then I guess researching the topic all the processes that are causing climate change in the age of anthropogenic CO2. So trying to make an emphasis that this will be a session that is open to everyone. Science is always open process. We'll have our own invited speakers, and then everybody should submit their abstract to our session. Please join us, so on and so forth, right? But then my emphasis is that this is not about the study about the sun also only. It's about everything else, as I just keep emphasizing to you. I want to be comprehensive, you understand? The sun itself is not sufficient even. So this is why I invited two other co-conveners, which is David Legates and then Sultan Hamid, right? From Stony Brook. David is from University of Delaware. And we had this session, we proposed it, and then the process seems to be normal. At that time, it went through. And then a few months later, we got this happy news. Yes, your session has been accepted, so on and so forth. My God, I was so happy, right? Finally, that I can do such a thing. Then they started to say, okay, you should invite your invited speaker now. So I did invite some very, very good people. I would call them, living and walking God, put it that way, in terms of certain areas they are doing, okay, in applied mathematics and physics and all that stuff, relevant to weather and climate. So I invited all of them. All of them agree, and then except for one, even more senior one was I had to say, please, Dick, his name is Richard Lindzen. He's the finest thinker that we have on this topic. So I asked him, and then all of them finally will agree to come. A lot of work, of course, I have to ask them to accept this invitation. One even willing to come his way from Greece. This is a master of hydrologist too. This person is so prestigious, done so many great work. So I want them to lead off the session, guide the session in a certain way. So we have papers and so on and so forth. So very fine and well. I think by September, we already pretty much get our session act together. Everything is fine, seems to be fine. So everybody submitted their abstract, paid their extract fees, so on and so forth. Some of them even pay for already the booking of the hotel in December and so on and so forth. Then come somewhere in the middle of September or so. First, I got an email from a friend of mine who's from Duke University. He's also proposing a session, a different session, but it's on the sun, right? Under the same conference. And he said, Willie, can you help me? He said. The AGU, the American Geophysical Union, decided to not allow my session because we do not have enough paper. And would you mind if I kind of get all my papers and then some of my paper? In fact, I say all of them agree with it fit my team, so I say okay. So can I get most of my paper coming into your session? I say sure, why not? It seems to be okay. I read all your abstract, it looks fine, and so on and so forth. And then we also gotten approval from the people in the American Geophysical Union, the people who organize all the session. They approved that, by the way. So it's all done and deal. So finally we have a session that is pretty big size, right? We have like maybe 30, 40 papers, right? And then plus all the invited speakers, right? And then, by the way, I was also an invited speaker. I cannot invite myself to my own session, but I got invited by Nicola, the other person from Duke who invited me to his session. His session is the one that's going to get canceled, right? So he's coming to mine, so now I belong to my own session too. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that as long as we're honest about that, right? So I tell you the whole story. Then, after all of that was done, all of that was transferred, they essentially tell us that, well, you could have a session, but then you could not have the oral session in the sense that you can only present things as poster. So I was already very unhappy with that, and I was really write a few more letters to them begging them, please let me give you a true accurate analogy. To have a poster session in this thing is truly big insult, especially for some of this very
What does that mean? Hold on, we need to explain what you mean. You mean a posted session?
No, it's only a session where you present it as a poster. You cannot have a microphone and talk about it where you have a room. And then, normally you can imagine a scientific conference, a session where you have a room, and then you present your PowerPoint, and then you speak, right? You hold a microphone, you speak.
Right.
But here they have two formats. One is oral presentation, one is poster. But then they only allow our whole session to be poster, not oral. First of all, that's already insult. If it were to be me, okay, I'm still low-level scientist, but not Einstein. You're basically asking Mr. Einstein to come to your conference, your meeting, and then don't allow him a phone and asking him to please present all your chart and write all your thing down onto a blackboard and put it in the poster, and then you stick it on the wall, and then you stand there and wait for hours for people to come to talk to you. I mean, it's ridiculous, first of all.
Who is the AGU?
It's American Geophysical Union. It is the world's biggest earth science-related sort of union, okay? And I begged them, they wouldn't budge. And then worse yet, one more week later, they come.